By now, you may have heard of Area 51. That's the super secret American base where all kinds of crazy stuff happens, like exotic technology, cutting-edge instruments of war. The United States government denied it even existed until August 15th, 2013. Even though it was clearly visible to the naked eye out on Groom Lake, it's surrounded by fences and guards with orders to shoot to kill. But what about Area 52? Why haven't we ever heard about that? It's 1:13 in the morning, July 11th, 1986, and all across the Nevada desert, people are about to see a UFO. Now they're wrong, but they're going to see one anyway. Because right now, on a secret airstrip that you won't find on any map, a 35-year-old Air Force Major named Ross Mulhare, he climbs into the cockpit of a black airplane. And here's the first strange thing about it. Officially, the airplane doesn't exist. The United States government will tell you there's no such plane. Mulhare's wife and kids don't know what he really flies. He told them he flies an F-5, a little trainer. And that was a lie. He had to lie, because what he's strapping into is the most secret machine in the world. It's pitch black, it's covered in flat angled panels, not a curve on the entire thing. It looks like something a kid folded out of black paper, and it only ever flies in the dark. Now, down below him over Nevada and California, people are stepping out into their yards at night and seeing something. Something big, silent, black. It's just hanging there in the sky. They call police, they file reports, they draw pictures. It looks like a UFO. They have no idea they're looking at him. At 1:13 a.m., Ross Mulhare lifts off into the dark, and he never comes back. It's tragic, but what the government does next is kind of hard to swallow. They throw a ring of armed guards around the crash site, M16 rifles, they lock down the airspace, they turn the firefighters away, and they won't tell a soul what kind of plane just went down. Quote, definitely not a bomber. That's it. That's all you get. They set off explosives in the dirt to dig out the buried pieces. They sift the soil 1,000 feet in every direction, and then they do the strangest thing. They haul in the wreckage of a completely different airplane. They break it into pieces, they scatter it all over the mountain so that anybody who came looking would walk away with the wrong plane. Remember that. Ladies and gents, here's the secret that they were burning the world down to protect. The UFOs, the lights that people kept seeing over their heads in the deserts for years, they were real. They just weren't from space. They were ours. America built an airplane you couldn't see on radar, and they let the whole world look up and blame Mars so that nobody would ever look at them. And it worked. But not every light in the sky was one of ours. The same investigators who cracked the rest, they took the strangest sightings apart piece by piece and couldn't explain them to this day. And the airplane that Major Mulhare died flying, the one they swore they retired back in 2008, it's still up there tonight. The Air Force just admitted it. And some of the men who kept the secret are sick now. They're dying. And they're told by the government that they were never even there. I'm John Genoa, and you're watching America's Strangest History, coming at you from the great state of Vermont. Forget about Area 51. I'm over that. I want to know more about Area 52. Stay with me. So you know Area 51. Everybody knows Area 51. The saucers, the alien autopsy tapes, a guy named Bob Lazar going on TV back in 1989 swearing up and down that he reversed engineered a flying disc out there somewhere for the government. Now, plenty of people have torn Lazar's story apart over the years, like colleagues he said he went to. They purportedly never heard of him. True or not, the man put Area 51 on the map. It's the most famous secret base on the planet Earth. And that right there, it's the problem. Because a base the whole world's looking at isn't much of a secret anymore. So here's a question nobody thinks to ask. If Area 51's this famous, where'd they put all the stuff that they really don't want you to see? Well, they put it next door. About 70 miles northwest of Groom Lake, out in the empty heart of Nevada, there's a second base. It's bigger, it's quieter, it's older. On paper, it's the Tonopah Test Range, 625 square miles of locked-down desert at the north end of the Nellis Range. But out here, folks just call it Area 52. And here's the first weird part. Area 51, they wouldn't admit it existed for half a century. Area 52, they never even bothered to hide it. It's right there on the map. You just never heard a word about what goes on out there. And that's a much better way to keep a secret. Here's how it works. Here's what's documented. Think of Area 51 as the workshop. It's where they take the craziest flying machine they could dream up, and they find out if the thing will even get off the ground. But once it's real, once it actually works, they move it 70 miles up the road to Area 52. That's where it goes to live, to train, to get ready for a war nobody knows is coming. The invisible airplane from a minute ago, born in Area 51, raised at Area 52. Now, don't let the words test range fool you into thinking this place is tame. It's not, because long before the airplanes, Area 52 had a different job. Back in the 50s and 60s, the government used the desert flats to do something that most people never heard of. They took bombs, they packed them with plutonium and ordinary explosives, and they set them off on purpose. Now, this was done just to see which way the poison would blow. In 1963, they ran a whole series of them out there. They called it Operation Roller Coaster. They blew radioactive plutonium straight into the open desert wind, staked about 300 animals downwind, and then they sat there and watched what it did to them. Hold on to that. It's terrible, I know, but we're going to circle back to it. And it's worse than it sounds. Now, you put all that together, a giant secret base on poisoned ground that nobody breathes a word about, and it's sitting right next door to the most famous alien hotspot on Earth, and the stories kind of just write themselves, right? True believers will tell you that it's not as crazy as it sounds. When Area 51 got too hot, too famous, the government quietly hauled the good stuff, the craft, the bodies, whatever you believe is parked out there, over to Area 52. Now, is any of that true? Well, that's exactly what we're here to find out. But here's what I can tell you right now. A whole lot of those UFOs people saw over Nevada, the sightings that kicked off the entire legend, were really coming from Area 52. They just weren't from another planet. They were coming off a runway. Well, not all of them. So how do you build an airplane that the whole world mistakes for a spaceship? That's my question. Well, it starts with a shape so strange, so ugly, that the geniuses who dreamed it up nicknamed it the Hopeless Diamond. Before we build that airplane, I owe you an answer. Because if you're anything like me, the second I said Area 52, a question should have popped into your head. Why 52? Why 51? And what the heck happened to 1 through 50? And the answer tells you exactly what kind of place we're dealing with. So here we go. Back in 1951, the government starts setting off atomic bombs out in the Nevada desert. It's above ground, out in the open air, and to keep track of where they're blowing these things up, they carve the desert into zones, numbered zones. But get this, they don't just number them in order 1, 2, 3 straight down the line, they scramble them on purpose, so that even if you got your hands on the test schedule and you saw something was going off in, say, Area 7, you'd have no idea where Area 7 actually was. Only the people on the inside could read the map. The numbers themselves were the very first secret. The main test site got numbers running up to around 30, but the worst stuff, the dirtiest experiments, those got done on patches of desert that don't even sit inside the main site. And those patches got numbers too. Higher numbers, farther out. The grid just kept climbing right up into the 50s. And that is where Area 51 comes in. It's the next stretch of lockdown ground sitting right next to a place called Area 15. It was handed a number the government figured nobody would ever come looking for. A secret hidden inside a math problem. Now, the true believers, they've got a different story. They'll tell you that it's Area 51 because of the year, 1951. That's the year they say the government hauled whatever fell out of the sky out to that exact spot. Now, true or not, that's yours to decide. I'm sticking with the randomized test numbering system, but this got me. Area 52 isn't a nickname the UFO crowd dreamed up. Pull the government's paperwork, the environmental reports, the contamination cleanup files, and there it is, black and white. The Tonopah Test Range, also designated Area 52. One number up the road from its famous neighbor. Same grid, same secrets, same poison dirt. They named it, and then they spent the next 60 years acting like it wasn't there. So that's it. A nuclear chessboard out in the desert where the higher the number, the darker the secret. And the darkest thing they ever raised on Square 52 wasn't a bomb at all. It was that airplane, the one the whole world mistook for a flying saucer. So how do you build a thing like that? Well, Forget everything Bob Lazar told you about back engineering exotic alien technology. The most alien-looking airplane ever to leave the ground didn't come from a crashed UFO. It came from a library. In the mid-70s, a radar man at Lockheed named Dennis Overholser, he's digging through a pile of translated Soviet research, and he stumbles onto a paper. It's about 40 pages long, it's dense, it's boring, it's ignored by everybody. It was written years earlier by a Soviet physicist named Peter Ufemsky. And buried in all that math was the secret to becoming invisible. Ufemsky cracked how to predict exactly how radar bounces off of a shape as long as you build that shape out of flat panels and hard angles. And guess what? The Soviets read this thing and they didn't really see a point. They let Ufemsky publish it right out in the open for anyone on Earth to grab. And the Americans? They grabbed it. So Ufemsky, well, he takes the math, he teams up with a retired Lockheed wizard named Bob Schroeder, and together they draw up the shape. And it's ugly. A weird, sharp-edged diamond, all flat planes, not curves, every single surface angled to kick radar off into empty space. On a radar screen, this thing, which is the size of a fighter jet, lights up smaller than a bird. They knew they had something special. They also knew it looked ridiculous, so they gave it a name. The Hopeless Diamond. There's just one problem. A shape that good at hiding from radar happens to be terrible at flying. It's too unstable for any human to control. It wanted to flip over and tumble right in midair. So they wired it up to a computer pulled from an F-16, making tiny corrections 1,000 times a second just to keep the nose pointed forward. December 1st, 1977, a test pilot named Bill Park, he takes the first one up over the desert at Groom Lake. They called it Have Blue. And the men who built it stood out there watching it fly, and even they thought that they were looking at something from another world. Their boss described it as a weird diamond-shaped UFO. Now that's not me saying it, that's the man who built it. And right there, that's your whole answer. Those UFOs over Nevada weren't shaped like flying saucers because they came from space. They were shaped like that because that's the shape that disappears. But a secret this big always comes with a price. And the men they picked up to fly it, they were about to give up their names, their families, and a few of them, their lives. First, they take your name. You're one of the best pilots in the United States Air Force, and the day they hand you this airplane, you disappear. On paper, you fly something ordinary, a nothing plane. That's the story you tell your wife, your kids, your parents back home. You get bussed out of Las Vegas on a Monday, and you're gone for the week. You work in the dark, you fly in the dark, and you come home Friday, but you can't say a word about any of it. They don't even use your name out there. Every pilot gets a number, a Bandit number. It marks the secret order that you join this squadron of ghosts. Bandit 1, Bandit 2, on down the line. And then, the ghosts started dying. You already watched one of them go down right at the start of this video. The man over the California mountains, the one they buried under a different plane's wreckage. For a while, folks just figured it was a tragedy, a fluke, maybe a one-off situation. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. October 1987, barely a year later, another one of those pilots, Major Michael Stewart, he lifts off into the desert night near Tonopah, and he flies straight into the ground. No mayday or distress call. He doesn't attempt to eject. He never even reached for the handle. When investigators pulled apart what was left of the jet hunting for what failed, they found nothing. No engine trouble, no mechanical fault. Nothing broke that shouldn't have. A flawless airplane, one of the finest pilots in the country, straight into the dirt. Tragic and curious. Now that's two now. Both of them elite, both flying perfect machines, both at night. Neither one made a sound, and neither tried to get out. So what does the official report blame? 2 words: spatial disorientation. The idea is that out there in the desert on a black night, no moon, no horizon, not a single light on the ground, a pilot can lose all sense of up and down. He swears he's flying level when he's actually pointed straight at the earth. And by the time he understands what's happening, there's no pulling out of it. And maybe that's all it was. These were brutal planes to fly. Most of these men were brand new to them. Makes sense. But something doesn't add up to me. And I hate when that happens. Remember, these weren't rookies. These were like the sharpest aviators the country had. And none of them, in that final second, caught it in time to pull up or punch out or eject. Nothing. It's like they never saw it coming at all. Curious. And it's not just the men who don't add up here, it's the airplane itself. See, the Air Force numbers its fighters in a nice, neat order. F-15, F-16, F-18. The last one before our mystery plane was the F-18. So the next one should have been the F-19, right? That's what the whole world expected. Toy companies were already selling F-19 stealth fighter model kits. But the real airplane? They named it the F-117. The number skips over dozens of others. It's out of order and it makes no sense at all. And to this day, the Pentagon's never explained why. Now, one more thing out there that doesn't fit. Think back to what these people did every time one of these planes went down. The ring of armed guards, the fake wreckage, ordering witnesses to forget what they saw with their own eyes. That's a staggering amount of effort to cover up an airplane. And it makes you wonder, just what were they so afraid that somebody might find out there in the dark? Because the whole time these ghost planes were falling out of the night sky, the regular people living around the desert, they were stepping into their yards after dark and they were seeing things that they couldn't explain. And it's about to explode into the single biggest wave of UFO sightings this country has ever seen. It starts in the Hudson Valley, New York, the early 80s, just north of New York City. Regular people driving home on the Taconic Parkway happen to look up, and hanging right there in the night sky, dead silent, is something the size of a football field. It's a giant V of colored lights. It's drifting slow right over the treetops. No sound, no engine roar, nothing. Cars pull off the highway, people climb out just to stare. And it doesn't just happen once. It happens again and again for years. Thousands of people, cops, pilots, whole families standing in their backyards, they're watching this enormous silent thing glide across the sky. And this is just one valley. Because the same thing is happening all over. Out west, down south, across the ocean. Over in Belgium, it gets so bad that the Air Force scrambles F-16 fighter jets at night, chasing a triangle their radar says is solid and real. The thing drops thousands of feet in a single heartbeat, leaving their jets eating its dust. Now, by the end of the 80s, this is the biggest UFO wave in living memory, and the whole world is asking a single question. What in the world are these things? Now, you and I already know part of the answer. Out near the Nevada test ranges, a whole lot of what people are seeing was coming right off the runway, just like we talked about. But now this stops being a story about airplanes, and it turns into something darker. Because the government had a choice to make. They could let people wonder and risk their secret, or they could hand people something else to chase. And they did one of the most disturbing things I've ever come across. Down in New Mexico, there's a man named Paul Bennewitz. He's a respected engineer, runs his own company, builds precision instruments for the military. From his house, he can see Kirtland Air Force Base, and one night he starts spotting strange lights over it. So he does what any engineer does. He films them. He records the signals. He starts trying to work out what they are. And that gets him noticed, because Bennewitz is pointing his cameras straight at a base full of secrets. So the government sends a man, a special agent named Richard Doty. I'm sure you've heard of him. And bless his heart, Doty doesn't tell him to back off. Doty doesn't make him disappear. Doty becomes his friend. And then he starts feeding him. Official-looking documents, government seals, secret briefings, every one of them confirming the wildest thing you could imagine. The lights were alien. The government was talking to them. Then there was this secret underground alien base out in the desert, a place called Dulce. Cattle mutilations, the abductions, all of it was real. And Bennewitz believed every single word. I mean, why wouldn't he? It was coming straight from a real government agent. I would. Right. Doty later admitted that he took it even further. He claims they planted fake air vents out in the desert to convince Bennewitz that he found a base. He claims that they rigged a way to project fake flying saucers right into the clouds. And it worked. It worked a little too well. Paul Bennewitz came apart. He got so lost in a war with aliens that never existed that he suffered a complete breakdown. He wound up hospitalized, and by the end, he was convinced his own wife was being controlled by them. He died in 2003, still believing. An innocent man taken apart piece by piece by a story the government invented. That one's not curious, that's just sad. And nearly every dark UFO legend that you've ever heard, the underground bases, the alien treaties, the secret committee called the Majestic 12, a giant chunk of it traces right back to one campaign. The folks who study this have a name for the agents who pull it off. They call them the Mirage Men. The government didn't just bury the truth. They built a lie and they handed it to the whole world. And if all this sounds too crazy to be true, In 2024, the Pentagon's office, the one that investigates this exact thing, they dug through decades of files, and what they found pointed right back at the government. For years, the military deliberately spread fake UFO stories to cover secret weapons programs. Near Area 51, an Air Force colonel handed a local bar owner fake photos of a flying saucer on purpose. And new commanders of the most secret programs, some of them were shown saucer photos and told that they were joining a project to reverse engineer alien spacecraft. Now, it was a lie, and it was used to test their loyalty. And some of those men believed it their entire careers. The finding is no aliens, no saucers, just smokescreen. They pointed us at little green men so that we'd never look at what was really flying over the desert. So that's it, right? Mystery solved. The UFOs were ours and the aliens were just a story. If only it were that simple. Because the same Pentagon report and the very same people who dragged all this disinformation into the light, they all slammed into the same wall. Some of those sightings just don't fit a secret jet. It's too big, too fast, seen by far too many, hanging over our biggest cities, doing things no aircraft on Earth, ours, or anybody's has ever been able to do. And those, to this very day, nobody's ever explained. So before we close the file on Area 52, we need to talk about the sightings the liars couldn't lie their way out of. March 13th, 1997, a clear night over Arizona, and just after 8 p.m. it comes in from the northwest, first spotted over Henderson, Nevada, then it drifts south towards Phoenix. And it's enormous, a perfect V. Some folks call it a triangle. 5 lights, locked in formation, witnesses put it at 1,000 feet across. Some say more than a mile. It glides over the city of 3 million people, low, slow, completely silent. Thousands of people watch it pass. Truck drivers, cops, airplane pilots. People stand in parking lots and watch the stars wink out one by one as this enormous thing slides right over the top of them. And one of the people watching that night is the governor of Arizona himself, a former Air Force officer, a trained pilot. Now, the Air Force had an answer ready, actually 2 answers for 2 different things. Around 10 o'clock, a row of lights showed up over the mountains southwest of the city. They hung there a while, then they dropped away one by one. The military said flares, A-10 jets on a training run. And you know what? For that part, they're probably right. That's what the most famous video actually shows. Flares fit it just fine. But that was the second event. The first one, 2 hours earlier, the giant silent craft, that was something else. For that, they said it was just a formation of jets, planes flying close together. Sure, maybe a few people saw exactly that, but thousands of others, including the governor, say no. What they saw was one solid object, a silent flying thing wider than a football field, blacking out the stars in a single unbroken shape while it crossed over the entire state. You don't mistake 5 little planes in formation for a solid mile-wide wall sliding over your head. And the governor knew machines. He said it himself years later, quote, "I'm a pilot and I know just about every machine that flies. This one wasn't one of them." He called it otherworldly. Said it couldn't have been flares. It was too perfectly symmetrical. And the Air Force? Of the 700 plus witnesses one investigator tracked down, the government never interviewed a single one. Curious. Phoenix wasn't the first, and it sure wasn't the last. These giant, silent black triangles have been turning up for decades, over cities, over highways, all over the world. It got serious enough that a private science institute in Las Vegas, bankrolled by a billionaire who actually took this stuff seriously, spent 4 years digging into it, over 1,000 reports. A real scientist running it, a man named Colm Keller. And the conclusion they landed on isn't one that you'd expect, because you'd figure it's got to be another black jet, right? Same as Area 52. Just one we haven't been told about yet. Not so much. Think about how they hid the F-117 and the B-2 bomber. Before these were revealed, they were never seen flown over cities. They were kept way out over empty desert in the dark. Exactly where this whole story started, right? That's how you hide a secret airplane. But these triangles? They fly low and they're slow. They're right over the heart of our biggest cities. In Keller's own words, it's open and brazen. And then there's the question nobody can answer. If these are our secret aircraft, then why, on more than one occasion, did military scramble fighter jets to chase them down? Why would they hunt their own airplane? It could still be something of ours, sure, I suppose. There's been whispers for years of other black projects, a hypersonic spy plane called the Aurora, stranger things people swear that they've seen out there in the bases. Maybe it's just the next secret, one nobody's owned up to yet. Or maybe it's something else entirely. After everything we just learned, the fake documents, the manufactured myths, how do you even tell anymore? Because that was the whole point of this lie, to make you roll your eyes at all of it, to bury the one real thing under a mountain of fakes. So when something truly impossible drifts over a city and thousands of people see it with their own eyes, we've been trained to just look away. So this is my take. A lot of what people saw over the desert was ours, black jets off the runway. That part's real. A lot of the alien story was a lie. It was built on purpose to hide them. That part's real too. But the biggest ones, the brazen ones, the ones that blacked out the stars over Phoenix and easily evaded our best fighter pilots, those nobody ever explained. The believers, the skeptics, the Pentagon, nobody. The file on Area 52 doesn't close, and the strangest part of all, it isn't history, it's still happening right now out in that very same desert, and the people who got too close to it are still paying the price. So let's go back to that desert, to Area 52, right now, today. You'd figure that after all these years, the secret would finally be over, the ghost planes grounded, the hangars dark and empty. They're not. Because those black jets, the F-117s, the ones the Air Force officially killed off back in 2008, well, they never actually stopped flying. A few dozen of them are still out there. They're kept alive at the hangars in Tonopah. And just this year, 2026, the Air Force finally admitted it out loud. Those retired ghosts are going to keep flying until at least 2034. Plane spotters still catch them slipping over California at night, refueling in the dark. The airplane that doesn't exist, that supposedly died 20 years ago, is still up there. As recently as 2019, a Las Vegas journalist named Caitlin White stepped into her backyard and watched a massive dark triangle with rectangular panels glide silently over her head. A trained reporter, a skeptic, and to this day, she has no idea what she saw. Decades later, and we're right back where we started. People are looking up, and nobody's giving them answers. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. For all the talk of saucers and cover-ups and lights in the sky, the people who paid the steepest price for the secrets of Area 52, they weren't chasing aliens at all. They were the ones who worked there. Remember way back at the start of this, those dirty bomb tests, the plutonium that they blew straight into the open desert, the poison ground I told you to hold on to? Well, men lived on that ground. In the 1980s, young airmen get sent out to Tonopah to guard those black jets and to quietly take apart stolen Soviet fighters in sealed-up hangars. Healthy kids, early 20s. And what nobody told them was that the dirt under their boots had been soaked in radioactive fallout decades before they even arrived. They didn't wear radiation badges, they wore fatigues. Today, those men are sick. One of them, Mark Eli, scarred lungs, tumors, kidney disease. Another, Dave Crete, he went looking for the guys he served with and found cancer after cancer after cancer. And when these men finally turned to their own government for help, they slammed straight into the very wall they spent their whole careers building. Because their service was a secret, there's no record they were ever at Tonopah. And if there's no record they were there, then officially, they were never exposed to a thing, and if they were never exposed to anything, the government doesn't owe them a dime. The secrecy that they protected with their lives got turned around and used to deny them any help that they earned. They were ghosts, remember? And you can't treat a ghost. And the civilian contractors who worked the same poison ground, they got taken care of. They have for years. It's the men in uniform, the soldiers, who got nothing. They've been fighting it out in Washington for years now. There's bills with their names on them moving through Congress as we speak. But as of right now, nothing's been signed, nothing's been fixed, and some of those veterans are running out of time. So what is Area 52? It's a place where we built something close to a miracle. The airplane that rewrote the rules of war. It's a place we hid behind the greatest cover story ever told. A lie about extraterrestrial aliens so convincing it drove an innocent man clean out of his mind and became the bedrock of half the UFO legends you've ever heard. And it's a place that quietly poisoned its own protectors, then looked them right in the eye and said, "You were never there." For 50 years, they kept us staring at the stars, telling us to look up and wonder about visitors from another world, so that we'd never ever look down at what they were really doing out in that desert, to the sky, to their own people. And the strangest part of all, after everything, the jets, the lies, the betrayal, there's still lights over Phoenix that nobody on Earth can explain. Maybe it really was all ours. Maybe it wasn't. That part, I'll leave with you. I'm John Genoa. This is America's Strangest History. Thanks for watching.